Yo, tonight we define agentic blackface and ways to avoid it. Coming up right on the other side. Good evening, fellas. How you brothers doing tonight?
Good to see y'all, man. Good to see y'all.
Another
Hey,
week.
Sharif, calm
August
down,
twenty
sir.
first, bro. Huh?
Sharif, calm down. Lord, calm your voice, sir. You've been yelling at people. Your chakras is off. Are you good, sir?
I'm all good, bro. I'm relaxed. I'm in a zen state. But I'm also hyped because this is August 21st, man. You know what I mean? Like this is Nat Turner started on his revolution today. Tucson and the Haitian Revolution, which we spoke about, Freedom Friday, started August 21st. So this is Black August, baby. So you
Mm-hmm.
know,
I'm with it, man. Ray, how you doing, boss?
I'm doing well, man. I'm trying to understand what's going on with Reef in his garb. I love it, but I
garb.
wish you had on a I
This
wish
is
you had on
like
an undershirt. I wish you had on an undershirt, bro. A better undershirt. Like I feel like I'm seeing a lot of your skin, and I don't want to see your skin.
yes, you do. That's why you're commenting on it. But leave my skin alone, right? That's exactly why.
Oh,
Yeah,
Chris. What up,
all
Chris?
all his weird fantasies always come out on this show on Sunday evening. Like weirdo, you know what I mean?
He the one
Oh,
walking around with like rainbow shoes and socks and shit, you know.
All the
hey,
You
time.
so
know,
first off, right? Don't
so.
do that.
It's true. It's true.
Use the Yeezys.
I mean,
You
you
can't afford these.
you
That's what
know.
I got.
I never said that. I think everybody can afford Yeezys if they want them.
you got to get them at Reef.
Oh,
I do
really?
have my slides on right now. They are walking on air, baby. I do some of my most comfortable shoes I own. But how you doing tonight, Chris? How you been, bro?
I'm good, man. I'm expressing my agency. I'm good. I'm good. I'm ruling the universe. I am like Sharif El Mekki out here on Twitter slapping folks. I was about to say something else, but just we are Wayne Bradying our way through the week on Twitter. It's good. It's good, and
I love.
also having some thoughtful conversation. Also, that's my
There you go.
favorite thing. This week we've broken some new ground with people we wouldn't normally agree with. So good, man. That's to answer your question. Good.
Well, fellas, just so I can set what we talking about tonight. So we are talking about one of my favorite things to discuss, which is agency. It's the concept, and I have a whole new organization that's about to be called the Agentic Institute. Right, it's something that I
Mm.
truly believe in, and we're gonna just like discuss the harm of charlatans, though, right? Because there's a lot of people that got the same skin that we got, and they engage in what I like to call as agentic blackface. Let me tell you what I think agentic blackface is, fellas, and there might be some flaws in it. You can let me know, it's fine. But in my mind, it's rhetoric that builds like a false dichotomy that tells black people that they must assimilate to whiteness in order to be great. Like they have to. Like if you just stop talking like the ghetto and you talk like these people and you just do this and you just deny your black skin, you will be, successful. And if you also hold off, pregnancy or whatever the case is, right? Um, so this is
Yo,
how I see it.
this is violent. This is
It is
violent.
not violent. I'm just talking about what I'm seeing. And again, this is not about a particular person or anything like that, because there's more than one. There's a bunch of people out there, and I'm sure we all can name a few if we needed to, but I'm not being messy tonight. But I will say, think of agentic blackface as like the ultimate Trojan horse, right? Like, so when you come
Mm-hmm.
in, it's because it's a black dude that's doing it. It's shiny. It's a way to talk about this thing that makes you feel like you empowered. But inside that Trojan horse is these little soldiers, and then these soldiers are telling you, well, you gotta forget about systemic racism, right? You can't bring that up. You can't bring up the atrocities of America. You can't, don't do that. Love your country more than anything, and it'll work out. And if you work hard, right? That's being agentic. That's what they'll say to you. But even in those warriors, y'all, it gets a little deeper. They got something in their pocket, and that thing got fentanyl on it that they passing out. You understand me? And
Mm-hmm.
that's even worse. You know why? Because that thing in that pocket is something that they give to white people to give them access to critique and discuss black people in a certain type of way that they would not be able to do, say, for your tweet or say for your book. And they allow these people, it gives these people license to harmful stereotypes on our people. And I'm here to talk about it tonight because I don't think that agency belongs to a political party. I don't think it belongs to any type of race. And I don't think that that we can ostracize our people in that way. So I just wanted to start there because it's a hot topic right now. And I wanted to present something to you. I wanted to ask you all, what is agency versus what is not agency? And I just want to hear from y'all. Let's just have a discussion because maybe we have to define that for people. But I know I just said a lot. Let me just let y'all react. Y'all can say, Charles, you bugging. But I'm going to shut up right here.
Well, I'll start off. I mean, I'll just make a comment. Charles, you bugging. I've always wanted to say that. That sounds, and then we can jump into the rest of it. You know what I mean? So, no, I mean, to me, agency is self-determination, man. It's like, you know, having a clear vision, even if it's not super clear, even if it's like, I don't know everything about what I need to do, but I know steps A, B, and C. I know what I'm not fitting to do, right? And so I think that piece about self-determination, having a clear understanding of what's oppressing you and what's not, what will, you know, get the shackles off you a little more, what will loosen them, what will free them, and what steps you need to take, and who you need to unite with to do it, right? Like, to me, it's all about self-determination, but having a vision for what you deserve as a human being, you know?
Yeah. Y'all jump in.
So when I think about agency, I'm gonna look at it from a teacher perspective right now, right? So when I think about agency as a teacher, I think choice and voice, right? So I think if you're in a classroom and your ability to kind of yield your power or share your power, right? So like you're not the expert in the classroom, but like you're allowing students to talk about things from the level of the student, right? So like you're building the agency of the student by allowing them to take ownership over their learning, right? So that's what I think about when I think about agency from a teaching perspective. So if you're a teacher out there, you come in to use that classroom as a soapbox, stop doing that. You are orchestrator of learning, and make sure that you give those kids the instruments in order to be able to learn, and you are just a conductor. That's it. Teacher talk time should be limited in those classrooms, and students should be doing most of the heavy lifting. That's the agency that I'm talking about.
Yeah, I would say that I think that agency is the knowledge and the expression of what you can do, knowing what you can do. So I agree with Sharif that it's, you know, it's self-determination in another form, though. Self-determination, I think, and agency are intertwined with each other, but agency really is that spirit of feeling as though you have volition over your world, your actions, your ability to achieve things. So, I mean, in practice, agency is, you know, being enslaved for years and years and years and coming out of it and being the fastest group to acquire literacy in the history of literacy. That's agency. It's also when nobody will build you schools, building 550 schools across the American South. That's agency. It's when sharecropping and slave-ish type of situations persist in the South, getting up in the millions and moving up north is agency. You know, it's like, so we have this history of agency. So it's interesting to have to even talk about it now because our history and our actions have proven that we have agency. Agency is all the Black kids right now that are going across your social media who got accepted into 5 and 10 and 15 different colleges, even though they're in the one of the most blighted hoods and that sort of thing, right? Agency is getting your kids, your brothers and sisters off to school in the morning because your mama can't do it because she's at work and it's on you. And you know, you got to do what you got to do to keep the family going, to keep things happening. All of those things are agency, and we're really good with it. People of color and Black folks are probably the most agentic people because they get things done with the greatest amount of odds going against them.
Yeah, man. I love where we all just kind of started there because I think it's a good baseline because this is also making me want to talk about some things that agency is just not, right? Like it is not, like I said, it doesn't belong to a political party. It is not just failing to acknowledge that there are systemic barriers, right? Like you don't have to do that, you know what I'm saying, to be what, you know, we would call agentic. Like listen, I would just say this. Agency is not anything that's going to make you hate yourself and the people that look like you. It's not going to make you deny your skin. It's not going to make you deny your history or deny the things that are happening to you. It will make you resilient. It will say, yo, there's going to be adversity in what I go through, and I have to have delayed gratification to get to where I need to get to. It is going to tell you what is quality for you and what is not, and push you to go and make those things happen and be, self-reliant. But the reason why I want to have this conversation is because there's a lot of people that are taking up this stance and aligning it with political parties or aligning it with groups that kind of don't wish us well as Black people, right? That kind of want us to forget this whole racism thing, this whole slavery thing, this thing that didn't happen. And it's a problem for me because it presents a false dichotomy. Like both things can happen, right? Like I can recognize these systems and still be resilient and self-determined to kind of make those happen. And it bothers me because when I see Black people doing it, that probably didn't have a lot of other Black people in the room when they were doing it, and they're targeting Black people and folks are open into it, but deep down, you know what I'm saying? When you are telling people that there's inherently something wrong with you, I think that that's just a problem for me. And I don't want to have a major reaction to it. All y'all can jump in, but Reef and I have been we've been bouncing and stuff. And Reef, you get to be my translator, man. I just want your thoughts and your more, I think you have an upper echelon of communication skills when we talk about this stuff. So let me say it in my answer.
I think that's cap.
You think that's cap? I think that's cap. I knew that was coming.
let me say it in my way that I think that anybody that does that is a charlatan and a sucker, and the way that they do it, and it's not for us or by us. And then Sharif, I would love to hear your much more not sanitized, but your different point of view on that.
No, I mean with this one, man, I think there's no sanitizing of this. I think what you said is spot on. I think the idea of any path that's telling you to hate yourself in the process of improving your condition is problematic. I think that type of messaging is oppressive in itself. I think when you look at the history of they wanted the pacification of people of color and whatever conditions they found themselves or wherever they were. There were a group of white folks in particular, and they're deputized people of color, right? Like you got to remember, like they deputize people to be in our communities and parrot the same thing, that you are less than a human being, and the only way to do this is be more like them, forget who you are, right? And I think the same thing, like we know this phrase about, kill the Indian, save the man. That mindset was also applied to every person of color that they tried to conquer, every group, right? And so whatever the saying is, you see that across that is part of the colonization blueprint, is to make sure that people view their oppressor as a superior being, and the way that they think about their worldview as superior as well. Like that is part of the brainwashing of, people of color, right? But there are people who have internalized it, and not only are doing it for money, they doing it because they believe it. You know what I mean? Like they like just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this because I'm shicey, I'm hustling. They're like, no, I believe this. I'm ingesting this full throttle, and yeah, let's have at it, right? And so those are the folks that we have to be really, really careful about.
Yeah, hey Reef, when you said deputized people of color, man, that resonated for me, and it resonated for me because, like, when I look at folks, right, like the plight of African Americans that have been in this country, right, is different from the plight of African Americans that are first generation Americans, right, or first generation to this country. I feel like the path is a tad bit easier for those that come to the country as opposed to the folks that are here, right? The struggle is real here, and that's why you see like the generational poverty that you see, right? It's like the system is set up, and I don't want to blame the system, but the system is set up in a way in which it's like it's going to hold the majority of folks back, especially the poor and disenfranchised, right? And so whereas when you have folks that come here and they experience success, and then all of a sudden that becomes the pinnacle of what the story is, right? But it's not the story, because that story does not speak to the people that have been here, right? And so I think that we need to name that, and that needs to be a part of the conversation as well, because there are folks that are here that are struggling, right? Like there are folks that I have family members that are struggling, and the way that it's not just because like they got pregnant or or like all these other things that are associated with how folks with these black-faced agentic thoughts are presenting to these folks, man. It's just not the same.
I think that's really important to call out, because one of the reasons to have this conversation tonight is that there is a persistent belief that we need to win the war on what's wrong with Black people. Like, why aren't we succeeding? And the reason that we aren't succeeding brings up a couple of different narratives. One narrative is obvious to me, is that there has been historic discrimination that continues today. The systems have never been made for us, never have been right. There hasn't been any justice. There hasn't been any recomps. There hasn't been any recapitalization of people who lost out on generations and generations of wealth. So that would be an obvious reason to say, why is it that Black people are in the situation that they're in today? The people who profit off of the problem will say, well, it's because of your culture, it's because of your people, it's because of your actions, your behavior, you're not individualist enough, you get pregnant too often, you do all the wrong things, you make all the, so that becomes its own separate narrative. This is where scientific racism comes in. You can take something like growth mindset, or take something like grit, the concept of grit, and students need grit, and the concept of agency, and each one of these things becomes the shiny penny of the right, the near right, the whites, and the Blacks who want to be white. That becomes their narrative. Oh, the problem with you and your young people is you just don't have a growth mindset. You just understand, you just don't understand this thing. And if we can implant the growth mindset into you, it will overcome all of your cultural deficiencies, all of your problems and your deficiencies. Oh, well, we did that for a couple of years. We sold some books. We had some seminars. We sold some PD. We moved on to the next thing. It's grit. Your kids just, if they could just have more grit, they might overcome these centuries and centuries and centuries of broken down systems that have put them into precarious situations that they're in. They can overcome it by just being gritty. Because, the one thing our kids never are is gritty. Our kids don't have any grit. They just don't know how to persist in things. And now along comes agency. And really what all of this is an answer to, and I'm only setting this up like this for our listeners, because it's germane to the conversation. What this ends up being is just an argument against social justice talk, against anti-racist talk, against examining the systems and trying to locate the problem in the person. That's what this is about. How can we find another way to locate the external problems that dog Black people and locate that problem in the person and in the children and the mom and the dad? And it works well. And if you really want to do that, the Blacks that you are going to get to help you do that and help you sell that are going to be quite often the Candace Owens of the world, or the people who've been here for generations. They've been here for 5 minutes and they already hate Black people the way everybody else does, right? Even though their skin is Black, they've been lifted up as you're the special one, you're the great one, oh my God. And then you write a book about this, and all of a sudden everybody's saying, everybody on the white side or the near white or the Blacks who want to be white side are saying to you, you're so brave for saying that. Oh my God, you told Black people that they're the problem?
We've been wanting to say that forever. We've
been wanting to say that for a long time. Can we get you at our conference? Can we have you speak to all the white people in the room so that they can hear you say this brave
that's
stuff?
The closest you can get to an N-word pass, B. And like and so I mean that's why you get that kind of reaction, man. I just like, even as we talking about this, like, I did research on this thing, right? You can be the grittiest. You can do all that stuff, right? And like, I wrote a whole book on it. But here's the thing, right? He didn't talk about the latent trauma that comes from that process, right? He didn't talk about like the emotional insecurities and the heightened anxiety. Like, there are a lot of people that have shoved this down.
I'm not being messy, because I'm not the messy one on this podcast. But you said he. And so, is there a specific person that you're talking about
or
is there like a writ large?
Actually, to be completely honest, one, I don't know the person personally, and I haven't finished.
He said he's not messy though.
I'm not.
He said he's not messy. That didn't they just make the whole Like you hear the scratching in the background, like you know.
Here's the thing for me. Like it's not. There are many people that do this, and there's a ton of people, and there's some
the whole mindset.
And we talked about like you know this concept that you was going into, right? That I talk about a lot. That's like you know voluntary immigrants and involuntary immigrants. And here's the thing, right? Around that, right? One, every Black person that comes from outside of the United States doesn't just come here and automatically do well, right? We don't. That doesn't get pushed into this narrative around those people that have come here and it didn't really go well here. You know what I'm saying? And two, and this is not to like jar a wedge between like the diaspora and our people. Like there's a lot of people there that I love. And here's something dynamic that voluntary immigrants do that have Black skin that are coming, right? There's a very intentional conversation. There's a very intentional like, okay, we are here in this country and I am giving up a lot to get you to this country. And I don't care if you want to be an artist. I don't care if you want to do poetry. I need you to be a doctor, lawyer, accountant. Like I need you to do something that is going to actually, you know, bring these things back to us, right? And like, and here when you are here, like when you were talking about, Ray, when you in that struggle, one, it can be very difficult, and you just might not know, like, or have the tacit knowledge to have that very direct conversation around. I want you to take advantage of everything that's here. And I'm gonna be honest with you, right? If you come from a place that don't have electricity, if you coming from a place where things is a lot different, and then you come to America, a ghetto looks like the Taj Mahal in certain cases. You know what I mean? And like, yo, this is what we're gonna do. But what happens is, instead of that being a conversation that Black people from here and not from here are having together, we're allowing other people to kind of come in and pit us against each other. So why you can't just be like the Jamaican? Why you can't just be like the dude from the Caribbean? Well, why you can't just be like the lady that came from Ethiopia? And then it is having us kind of fight each other, you know what I'm saying? And they get to back away and say, I ain't got nothing to do with that conversation. I didn't write this thing on agency. I didn't say the thing that you need to do this. That was your man that said that. And then what happens is we spend so much time fighting or whatever, and then white supremacy gets to chalk up another point on the board.
And we really don't spend a lot of time fighting, in my mind. Just this isn't to dismiss what you just said. This is just like, I don't think we win that argument. You know, listen, first of all, Black people are successful. We are doing a lot before these folks get here, right? You can come here and be here for 5 minutes and enjoy everything that we built for the last, like, God knows how long or whatnot. But don't pretend like you come here and you're all doing fantastic, like you just said, Charles. Right. Like, let's not live in an illusion like where they all come here and they're all doing well and we're all doing poor. No, it's the exact opposite, right? We are actually, given all the stats that we could talk about, bad stats or whatnot, there's a lot of us living in houses, driving cars, living lives, having jobs, having bank accounts, the whole thing. So let's not act like we're all broken down with it. Let's not buy into the narrative that they want to buy into. They get here and listen, they get the anti-Negro pitch when they get here real quick. You want to be fully American? You want to be fully in the mainstream American? We'll tell you how. Hate niggas, right? That is like, that's just like the straight up kind of.
We did this show already.
Well, we coming back to it, right? This is the pitch to them. They talk to their daughters and their sons and tell them not to interact with American-born Black folks. They have conversations with themselves, and then they grow up and write books to show how much they hate Black people, right? And their books are full of everything. All of our problems are our own invention. It's all in your mind. It's in your head. Racism isn't as bad as it is. The systems aren't that bad. Even if they were bad, it wouldn't matter, because if you worked hard and don't get married and, you know, finish high school and blah, blah, blah.
Oh, you missed the most important part though, Chris.
What's that?
You have to be in love. You have to be in a love affair with the United States. You have to look past any blemishes, right? And you have to,
that's where it starts.
Love her.
That's right.
And right. You being critical of systems, not loving her.
Well, so I'm gonna pass this to the most critical of these systems.
What's the matter? Yo, get your boy. I mean, one thing that first came to my mind, and Chris, you're talking about like just this idea of like white supremacy, like be more gritty, so to speak, have more character and resolve, pull yourself up, and then also look at the individuals who did. Right, because for white supremacy, that's a win, because that means don't critique me at all. Like, take me out of the equation, take the historic, racism and the policies, take all of that off the table and look at individuals who, same way they do within the community, within the, Black community who's been here, right? They love to show, well, there's one. There's one, there's, what I mean, all the folks that they've let, in the gate, or who fought and broke down the gate and got into whatever particular position they want to point out to absolve themselves of addressing the conditions that, are all around, right? And so when Malcolm talks about he has no patience for, a system that crushes individuals and then criticizes them for not being able to stand up to the weight of being crushed, right? And that's what they do, right? But there are folks who particularly, and you know what, I'm so glad you're talking about folks who recently got here, because I want to specifically call out Muslim immigrants too, because they should know better because of what the dean teaches, but they love to jump in. And I've heard like imams weigh in and talk about this as if they've ingested white supremacy wholeheartedly and are preaching nonsense, right? And so their whole thing is it's like John Henrik Clark talked about, we're not looking for a curriculum of inclusion, we're looking for a curriculum of liberation. They're forget liberation, just
drink the Kool-Aid.
Ignore all this stuff and be as white as you can be. You know what I mean? Forget your roots, forget any of that. Just assimilate and everything else will be fine. I mean, that's their medicine. That's what they're peddling. It's snake oil. It's snake oil.
It's the assimilate. It is an updated version of that native boy that started the year in their native garb, and then at the end of it was in a suit, right? And I just want to be very, 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 because I see some comments, and I want to just respect these because I don't want people to confuse what we're saying. So one of the comments said Africans that were stolen are kidnapped victims, not involuntary immigrants. This one said the slave trade was a violent kidnapping, and we can't paint them with a broad stroke. So let me just address this really quick because this is how stuff gets misquoted. So for one, I want to start with the broad stroke thing first. We're not saying that everybody that comes to this country, that everybody that just got here does that. What we're doing is having a conversation about the ones that did just get to this country and that are doing that. And so that's not everybody. And this is a conversation that I think many of us have been a part of. And I've engaged.
Yeah, there's a lot of solidarity too. Yeah.
Yeah. So there have been conversations because the ones that don't come here and do that don't appreciate it either. And so I want to be very clear. The other thing was around when I say involuntary immigrants versus voluntary immigrants. I want to be very clear. We're not. So we are the people that were born here. I'm an involuntary immigrant because at no point did anybody in my lineage say, I am getting on this boat, I am getting on this plane, I am swimming or teleporting to the United States. We are just been here, right? There was nothing involved in it. A voluntary immigrant, they may have been on a slave ship and ended up in the Caribbean. They may have ended up somewhere else, right? Or they may still be on the continent. But at some point, somebody made a conscious decision that said, I'm going to America. And I'm going to America, and this is what's going to happen, right? So I just want to be very clear because it's important that we precise with language. So, of course, slavery is violent kidnapping. Of course, that's not. So I just wanted to clear that up. But that is the difference between a voluntary immigrant and an involuntary immigrant. It is not limited to Black people or whatnot. But in this case, it's one of the conversations that's being had. And it's an important conversation that the four of us are having because the people that we're talking about share our skin. And they have, some of them gain the trust of people in our community, but yet and still, outside of that, they don't have any Black relationships. They don't have Black people around them. It's a bunch of white folks. And these white folks are using them at times to be their teleprompter, to be their bullhorn, and to be their walking inward that they can't say, but they can sit back with their coffee and let it happen. So
who's your audience, right? Yeah, I think so. It's like, who's your audience? Like, are you talking about Black people to white people, but pretending you're talking to Black people, right? Like, you know what I mean? So some of it is like, one, who crowned you the spokesperson, for these Black communities? Like, which Black community is saying like, yes, you recognize us, you see us, you've experienced with us, right? Everybody should, read and reread the miseducation of the Negro, right? Like, consistently think about what Carter G. Woodson is saying, because one, it touches like how old this is, right? Like how this blueprint is so old, right? But he was talked about like, you can't serve the people by giving them orders as far as what to do, right? Talking down to them, telling them like, this is what you need to do. The real servant of the people, he said, must live among them, think with them, feel for them, and die for them, right? Like that's what Carter G. Woodson is saying, like, right? Like that is the the framing of people who the people would elect to be spokespeople for them. But what we have is the exact opposite. People who don't live with them, people who don't identify with them, people who are just like, oh no, I'm actually over here. And my whole audience is somebody very different who are basically, and I'm basically saying like, assimilate with this group who have anointed me. Right. And so we just can't be confused about who elected these folks to be. And I'm not talking about in the political space, although it applies there too. But I'm talking about like who, basically said that you are, going to be crowned, so to speak, as our spokesperson because you identify with this struggle and the righteousness of this struggle.
And who. So just insider baseball for people listening and watching. There are conferences right now and conference rooms that are booked, and there are discussions being had. And in those discussions, there's somebody sitting on a panel somewhere with a lot of head shaking in the crowd saying that we are just teaching our kids that racism is so bad that it's insurmountable, and that we're putting in their minds that they can't do anything. And we're teaching them a steady diet of victimhood. Like this word keeps coming up. We're teaching Black kids to be victims and that they're oppressed. And because we spend so much time talking about the fact that they're oppressed and installing them with victims, so the narrative goes, we're disabling them from ever being able to achieve anything. Right? These are literal conversations that are being had in places. And they do sound very much detached, like detached people who never met a Black family and worked in a Black family. I'm not here. I don't have to say the obvious thing, which is, of course, I'm not saying there's none of our people that don't have problematic behavior. What I'm saying is the problematic behavior of the people in the dominant group is not talked about as if they are the whole group. Yeah. And that same group in our group is being talked about as if they are endemic of all of us. It's nonsense. Black people are getting up tomorrow, going to jobs. They're getting up, going to jobs in some cases that they hate to make the thing happen. They are getting in lotteries for ugly shoes. They are running they are running schools and operating schools and getting PhDs and writing books and exchanging information, having their own. We are not people that needs to be lectured about agency after 400 years. We need to be lectured about justice. Now, we talk a lot on this show. Everything we talk about on this show is agency. We need to build our own. We need to grow our own. We need to support our own. We did, all the Kwanzaa principles, right? Like Charles, why would we be lectured about anything having to do with doing when all of our music is about how we achieve and hustling? The stuff I hate in hip hop is honestly the retort to this. All of our hip hop is about making something out of nothing.
Because they sick of you niggas. That's just why.
It's about making something out of nothing.
That's why though, right? It is one more tactic to get rid of a flea that is constantly biting me. And we tried to do this, we tried to do that, we segregated their schools, we desegregated their schools, we did this, and they still let's use their own kind of against them, right? And I think, but that's why though, right? It's like because reparations always sound crazy when a Black person said, but then you start to actually read a book, and then you start to realize all the groups that got reparations in American soil. Or it's like, y'all should really be able to pick yourself up by your bootstraps and be independent, divorce the system and do your own thing. And then you bomb Oklahoma City. You know what I'm saying? You bomb those people, right? We have shown this type of resiliency over and over and over again. You have laughed at our noses and our lips, but now them things go for $10,000, $15,000 a pop, and business is booming. They make you hate everything about you until they can take it from you, bottle it, and sell it back to you. And the reason why this show is happening is because they're now using people that look like us in order to do it. And I want to address something else, because somebody said some of our own people had that same mentality. Yes, you are absolutely correct. We've mentioned some of those people now, but that's why we want to have this conversation about charlatans, and that's why critical thinking is important, and that's why knowledge of self and who you are and where you come from is important, because if you know who you are, I cannot knock you off your square. If I tell a lie about Sharice's mama, he gonna look at you and say, you lying, because he knows his mama. And as long as we don't know who we are and we don't grab that, as difficult as it is, they're going to keep sending our own to confuse us and convolute us.
Yeah. If you are a teacher and you are trying to exhibit agency in the classroom, right? So for example,
wait. What? You just stepped on. I like how you just stepped on that to go. Okay, do your thing on teachers. I just didn't want to. Because I know we was having a conversation about general. Do your thing. My bad. I shouldn't have stepped in. Go ahead. That was a hard transition, Ray.
No. So the show is about agency. I'm talking about an agentic.
Show your agency, Ray.
I will not.
You don't agree that was a hard transition just now? Do your thing, bro. Do your thing,
I will
man.
not. I shalln't.
I shall. You shall do what?
I shall not.
Inventing words. That's real agency. Agency is when you invent words that don't. I shalln't.
Yeah, do your thing. Do your thing. Go ahead, bro.
Well, listen. I don't know where you were going with that, Ray. Like in terms of teachers, but I do think that this is, if you're an educator watching this and you're people watching this, you want to know what the import of this conversation is. Sharif and I will probably agree on this because of our Freedom Friday shows, the morning shows. But we have not just a right, we have a responsibility to tell our kids to investigate the systems that are supposed to serve them, all of them. So if you are trying to blame them for their own problems, it makes it hard for them to investigate. Like, listen, we talk about police deaths and killings and stuff like that. We don't talk about the number of jackups. Just walking by somebody and somebody throws you up against a thing or throws you down on something or whatever, and you're 11, 12, 13, 14 years old or whatnot. Now, that kid doesn't need a book on agency. That kid needs the book on understanding the system that just threw them to the ground. And it happens often. So you sound like a real sucker when you out here talking about all our kids need is Jesus and not to get pregnant and blah, 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 as you're getting slammed to the concrete on a recurring basis. Their attitudes don't come from nowhere. Their attitudes aren't just like self-invented because they're sitting around thinking, oh my God, I've been told that there's racism in the world, so that must mean I can't do anything. It's the dumbest shit I've ever heard. And I'm like, I don't even want to treat. The reason I wanted to do this show is because Charles has done real scholarship on the concept of agency and the import of it for Black youth and for us as people. But there are going to be other people who are going to take a concept like that and do the thing that white people and white supremacy always does, which is to weaponize it against us and our own people. Yes, our people need to be told you can do it. You can do whatever you set your mind to. But when, goddamn it, when did anybody suck down the dumb idea that we haven't been told you got to work twice as hard to get half as much? If you're going to be a street sweeper, be the best street sweeper that there has ever been. I don't care if you're going to flip burgers, be the best burger flipper you've ever seen in your life. Which one of us, once you get an education, they can't take it from you? Which one of us hasn't heard that from Black people in our culture, right? Tell me a Jay-Z lyric that isn't about building an empire from nothing, right? Why would we even allow, I don't care, especially Negroes who've been in the country for 5 minutes and want to tell stories for white folks so they can get trotted out like Hottentot woman into different classrooms and different conferences and shit to be trotted out like this is one of the good ones. He just knows how deficient Black people actually are and how racism doesn't mean anything. Nigga, stop it.
Yeah, man. It's I don't even know
y'all killing me tonight, man.
No, I mean, yeah.
We said we're going to start having some real conversations in this thing. Go ahead, brother. Go ahead, Reese. I love it.
Y'all should have said that beforehand, man. I got this streaming in my school.
No, I mean, but it's when you think about like just the idea that hijacking some of the language, but then sullying it in such a way, right? Like because Black folks have always talked about agency, and no matter who it was, if it's King, if it's Malcolm, it was, and I think mindsets matter most, right? Like telling people like, yo, we got to get off these drugs and be clean and be sharp and right. Like it was like a mindset, but it wasn't absolving the systems that created these type of conditions, right? And it's like calling people in out of love for your community is very different than having a level of, a disparaging mindset, right? Or detesting, right? Like, and that's what I see. Like, there's some of these folks who, as you said, have been here for a couple of minutes. They detest the people who've actually built the thing that they actually came to, that they actually ran to, that actually they're finding some individual success. But when you look at that, like what that psychology, and they all said, right, the consistency in the Black freedom fighters and that liberatory movement and mindset is the same, right? Like the consistency of what they talked about, what they preached, how they talked about building us up and critiquing the system, fighting the system, right? Like they were able to do both. But these other folks, the fake folks, they can't do both. Their mind can't even wrap around doing both. So they put all their ammunition towards targeting Black folks who are struggling, right? Like, because they can't think to critique the system. They can only critique those who are already marginalized, because that's where they see their power base in. And so when Bobby Wright, that Black psychologist from back in the day, what did he say? Like, Blacks who are not conscious of their Blackness, who have no sense of destiny, then go through white systems of education, were formal or informal, right? Ultimately end up serving their own oppressors and become a means of oppressing their own people. That rhetoric that they talk about, this is a form of oppression, and they are played. Just like, Cole talked about that Trojan horse, but the only thing is they're visible because their audience ain't us. They ain't tricking us. They are literally speaking for white supremacy.
Right.
Hey, so I don't want to hard pivot back to the teachers.
You good, bro? Ray, you good?
You unpack right there.
You good, Ray? You good, bro? You good? I just didn't know where you was going, bro. That's my bad.
Yo,
I didn't know your staff was listening either, so that's my bad.
Listen, Chris tweeted something the other day and said, like, teachers are the most important, educators are the most important. I forget exactly what you put out there, Chris, but it was basically saying, like, in all this fight, educators are the most important factor in all of this. So
they're the most dangerous. Radical teachers will change the world. They
Yeah.
are the most dangerous frontline workers right now on some shit that we are about to lose our democracy. The people educating our children about what's happening in the world are dangerous, which is why they want to put gag orders on them. It's why states want to stop them from being effective, stop what they can teach and put gag orders on them. And the ones who say, I don't care what kind of gag order you put on, I'm going to teach what I'm going to teach. And I'm going to teach the truth. And with blah, blah. Ones who get radical with it, those are the ones who really going to save some minds.
Yeah. So if you are a teacher and you are trying to be agentive in your classroom, right? If you're teaching literature, teaching literacy, text to self connections with students is extremely important, right? Allowing students to be able to see themselves in the curriculum, extremely important. If you are teaching math problems, right? You're teaching kids how to solve problems. Please use real life connections with these students, right? So like if you are teaching a math problem and you're teaching kids in the inner city, make the foundation of that problem be something that they can use in the inner city where they are, right? I think a lot of times when we approach questioning for our kids, it's like we use these examples of suburban situations, right? And that's not creating agency for inner city kids. And lastly, we need to start looking at kids as problem solvers, right? Like our kids are problem solvers. They have the ability to solve problems, but in order for them to be able to do that, we have to have educators that are, one, willing to take the chance on them, two, setting a high bar for them, right? It's like, you can't expect for a kid to solve real life problems if you're teaching them below grade level, right? And just having that high bar for kids is extremely important. So teachers that are exhibiting agency in the classroom, think about those things.
And I think so. I love that. And I wanted to like even add on to that because, we have a lot of our kids that fight through and that have fought through systems that we've led, that I'm sure Ray can point to some students, Reef can point to students, Chris can point to people I know, I can point to young people that I know that worked and did all this stuff, right? But nobody takes into account like that Black achievement trauma tax that comes from that, man. There's an effect that happens when you have to constantly brush off things. And this is how you know that whole theory is bullshit about, well, if you got religion and if you don't get pregnant, you don't do this. You know what group gets pregnant the most? White kids. But somehow white people are not at the bottom of the economic ladder. You know who's the most atheists in this country? White people. But somehow They are not at the bottom of the education structures, right? All the things that you say that have to be present in order for a group of people, black people, to be successful are these things, but yet and still white people lead in all of those categories, so much so that they done got rid of Roe v. Wade so white people can go back to having babies because they worried about not being a top population no more. So
Here's
how
one
does
for
that
you.
work as a theory?
The majority of poor white kids are in middle class schools. People never talk about that.
And this is what I'm saying, right?
The majority of white kids do not go to, the majority of poor white kids do not go to poor schools.
Absolutely.
They go to middle class schools. The majority of black poor are in black poor schools. Right. What does that tell you right there? So I want to make this distinction.
Can we just clarify what a poor school is?
What I mean by that is where the majority of the kids aren't poor. White kids go to schools. Poor white kids go to school where the majority of the kids around them are not poor. Mm-hmm. So you got to get your mind around how that makes a difference in what they get, because the majority of poor black kids go to school where the majority of the students around them are poor, right? Mm-hmm. So poverty by itself isn't the same for white kids and black kids. They're not having the same experience in the school system. They're having two different experiences. Poor white kids are having a different experience in the school system than poor black kids are having. And it's not because of agency. It's not because they have more agency or more grit or more of the growth mindset than anybody else has. They didn't do that themselves. But I want to circle back to this point for people who may have joined late. Agency in blackface is the type of agency. It's a 1776 agency, the type that will tell you if you love America and you ask no pertinent questions about its founding and you don't bitch about anything that happened to you or whatnot, and then you have agency, work hard, don't get pregnant, all that type of stuff, you too can be probationary white, and you too can get all the benefits of being a probationary white. Actual agency is if there are conditions, if the powers that be are poisoning the water in your community or beating your ass down in the courts or with police officers or whatnot, actual agency is fighting that and showing up to investigate the ways that the system is actually working against you. That's agency. So agency in blackface will have you sitting in schools where they will tell you that Thomas Jefferson was like one of the greatest thinkers alive, and that you were supposed to identify with him and not identify with the people that he savaged, right? Mm-hmm. Actual agency will tell you, investigate that so it don't happen again, right? So we just want to make the distinction between agency and blackface and actual agency that we should be imparting into our children.
Mm-hmm. Yo, this right here, like, we need to unpack this. So it's hard for students to concentrate on having agency for themselves when school administrators and teachers use the local police to issue tickets and fines for what they deem disorderly and disorderly conduct. Hey, that's a word right there, right?
That is.
You know, we
I knew
definitely
someone was call you out for that, Ankrum. I knew someone was
call you out for that. Hey, listen, man, listen. But seriously, man, you definitely got folks out here that are policing black and brown bodies. You got folks that are out here policing hairstyles and doing all the things, right? And they don't really do that in the suburbs, right? Like, you can go and have purple hair and show up in
purple hair, and show up
how you can show up however the hell you want. But yet when we got kids that are coming in with braids and expressing themselves, expressing themselves in the ways in which they express themselves, right? It's like, oh, that's interrupting learning, or that's disruptive, or like, nah, man, that's just us being who we are, right? And so if you're gonna love us, leave us alone.
Right. Shout out to the box braids. I just learned what that is from my daughter a little while ago. I thought it was braids that come in a box. Like, it's actually a style. So shout out to the box braids.
So random, Sharif. So random. I'm glad you learned that, brother. I appreciate it. You should get some, Sharif. You should have some box braids, bro.
I don't know about that, but some straight backs is the right about
next
time.
Week. But here's my question, right? Was Emmett Till not gritty? Did Emmett Till not have agency? Was he not Did he not believe in God? Did he have a girl pregnant? Like, no, right? Did Tamir Rice, was that his issue? Was that he didn't check off everything in that list? Was that the thing? Or that little girl that got drugged up and slammed by a police officer out of her classroom chair? Was she pregnant? Did she have a baby prior? Did she not believe in family? Was that what it was? She didn't believe in a nuclear family? Your theory is bullshit and it's harmful to black people. And it's harmful in a way. Yes.
You know who didn't have agency in that story? The black educator at the front of the room who called the police on her,
bruh.
and then said if she had just complied, she wouldn't have got thrown across the room.
That's the blackface that we're talking about. That's the agentic blackface.
That's
and that goes back to that quote that you just put up, Ankrum. You know what I mean? Like that speaks directly to that, right? Like,
the trusted person in the room, trusted, an educator.
Man, if I could remember. If I could even remember, and I wish I did, and my brother and I were talking about this, a while back. Like, I wish we could remember how many times we have been stopped by police. High school graduates in college. Like, how many times? How many times police had guns in our faces? How many times we have been locked up? Right, and these are the folks who were, like doing something. I can't say we're doing everything that they are, to say, because they're saying the only strategy you should use to combat white supremacy is to fit in, right? Like that's literally what they say, the strategy. The only strategy you should have. So we definitely weren't doing that. But to think about the amount of time that we've been basically assaulted by America's biggest gang, and that's the playbook, to just say, like, well, ignore all of that, have love for that, and just press on. But like, if anybody who's trying to tell you just the strategy is to hate the folks that you come from, and the best way to mitigate racism and white supremacy is to fit in better. So if you're not succeeding, that means you're not assimilating well enough.
I just figured out what's wrong with that.
I reject all of that.
You know what? That's your problem too, Sharif. This is what's wrong with all you Negroes.
Sharif's problem.
I'm about to tell you, not just Sharif, all of y'all. I'm about to tell you your problem.
Tell us our problem.
I'm about to tell you your problem. This is what's wrong with you Negroes. Man, this is a beautiful country. It had a beautiful founding. Some of the best things that have ever been said and written and thought about freedom and justice and liberty were written in the history of mankind were actually brought about in this country. It is a grand experiment. It's a beautiful experiment. And you Negroes are just too negative about the beauty of what this. I mean, man, a room full of people coming together to write something so eternal and lasting, like the Constitution, the most beautiful and poetic kind of description of a democracy that had never existed before. What is wrong with you Negroes? This is the first country that got rid of slavery, and you all are just so ungrateful. What the hell is wrong with you Negroes?
That thing, first of all, that thing ain't have y'all in mind when they ain't have black folks in mind when they was writing that thing, right? That's the
negativity.
They ain't even had the education of their own people in mind when they wrote that joint. That's why you don't see it in the Constitution.
And then the second thing, right? And I think El Michelle named this, right? And like a lot of folks that are in scholarship are naming this. Like, even when slavery stopped, that didn't mean that the raping and the all the shit that they was doing stopped, negative, right? It did.
You're being negative. Okay. Where's your agency? You're stealing agency from us, bro. You're like, why talk about those things, man? Why talk about it? It's not like it's happening anymore. It's not like there's like those things are happening today.
I think all of us have been pulled over before, and like I think like it's just the maddest I've seen Reef was when I got pulled over, right? And I think the saddest part, I think the part that made Reef more sad was that I was just like, all right, whatever. Like, I gotta move on, and like, cause that's just our reality. Like, it's a reality. Like, Ray don't get to just like reflect his whole day after like he gets stopped by the police. And he got, hey, bro, I gotta go to work. I gotta go do what I gotta do. I gotta go raise kids. And it's the thing, right? You can't tell me that the most successful people in this country per capita got all this grit when you see videos of Karens every single day that don't know how to be told no. So I can get a billy club in my face. That dude had a gun on me that entire time, and I had to tape it. Like, I had to tape it, and y'all heard him tell me it's because your cologne smelled too good, bro. Like, that was the reason that you had a gun on me for 30 minutes.
You taping it was agency, right? Like, I'm glad you taped it.
And the thing about it, taping it alive. Yeah, and it could have got him killed at the same time, right? Like, and that's the crazy, that's the black existence. Taping it could have kept him alive, and it could have very well also been the thing that got him killed at the same time.
Well, and Reef,
so what do you teach your young people about that moment? What do you teach young people about that? Because this is where the two sides of the fence diverge. One side tells you that just focusing on that, teaching your kids to focus on that, is part of their problem.
Right. There were what you tell them. One, you break that whole tape down. Right. There were multiple things happening. Right. One, I didn't put that camera in his face. He didn't know I was taping. Two, you heard me calm him down. He was nervous. I had to make him comfortable. I had to tell him what I was doing. Actually, I was coming from a book signing from a book that I produced and published and we all have worked on and we've done stuff together on or whatever. I was coming from actually being Agentic, right? Like I had to calm him down and get him out the situation, right? I couldn't startle that person. And so if you tell me that I'm not where you are because I don't have self-control, agency, foresight, thought, emotional intelligence, I had to have every one of those skills at a maximum level, because if I would have got shot with nothing there, somebody with everything y'all know about it would be like, well, he must have did something. He must have did something. And they don't want that to be a conversation in schools. They don't want white kids to have to struggle and deal with that reality because it does not make sense to them. It does not compute. They don't understand, because when a cop pulls them over unjustly, they say, why the fuck did you pull me over? I need to talk to somebody.
I've seen that in action. Like,
Yes.
I've seen the vitriol that exists when a person that's not historically marginalized gets pulled over. Like the level of entitlement that occurs.
What's your name and badge number?
Yes.
I want a supervisor. Get a supervisor out here right now. What's your name and badge number? Yeah. No, I do not answer questions. I saw it on YouTube.
Yeah.
I don't answer questions.
Or you can talk to my attorney, which is not a bad thing, right? I feel like everybody that comes into contact with the law should say, I would like an attorney. Like they ask you, like, yo, yeah.
Oh, my bad. Go ahead, Ray. Go ahead, because I was riffing off what you said. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, because
I think when they read you your rights, right? When you tell you have the right to an attorney, okay, sure, I'm gonna take that right. I feel like everybody needs.
But it's so funny, right? Because y'all all checked on me, and again, that was the most upset I'd ever seen Reef. We had like a conversation after that, and I appreciate all y'all, but I never seen him like that. But one of my friends that don't live my reality was like, well, you should have got their badge number. No, you shouldn't have got out the car when they asked you to get out the car. I said they brought drug dogs. Like, well, you shouldn't have opened it. Brett had a gun on me and his hands were shaking. I could see it, but I saw his hand shaking with a gun on me. You know what I'm saying? I'm just like, yo, like they don't understand what mode one has to go through in that space. But then you have Black people that's coming to this country that are writing books, that are getting booked at conferences that are mostly white, ain't two Black faces in sight, and they acting like they talking to the people. They acting like they know how to play dominoes. They acting like they know, like they've been to a cookout before.
Right.
Well, I don't want to cast this
and they get
on
exalted.
folks who don't play dominoes. So I do want to shoot some bail for
Hey, listen, bro. I've been to your house. Your house is Afrocentric as hell. It ain't got to be dominoes, bro. I got you the dark colored crayons. But the point is that a charlatan.
Be quiet, right?
a charlatan, a Black. An agentic blackface, somebody that's acting in that, do not mean you well. They mean to increase their own lot in life. They mean to be able to have a platform of which they can look down on you as. They mean well. And I think that is something that we have to teach our babies. We have to teach our community. We have to teach our educators. We have to teach people with this skin to have discernment, man. The white folks would call it critical thinking. Granny would call it discernment. We got to get back to discerning, yo. And I think that's why I thought this was a really important show to do. And I know we run up on time. I can end this or whatnot, unless people want to keep going. We can move into final thoughts. But
I think the spirit of discernment is extremely important when we having these types of conversations, right? It's critical to our existence. It's critical to us staying alive. You better have a spirit of discernment out in these streets.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I'll move us into final thoughts if that's the case. Then, man, Reef, you want to get us kicked off, B?
Yeah, man. I appreciate this conversation, man, and just really, again, centering, the people who've been brutalized, the people that actually built while being brutalized. Like, and to me, that is like, if that ain't like grit and agency and self-determination and all the things, right? I was talking to a veteran. He's like, I'm sick of these people talking about, what folks have to do. It's like, while we were being lynched, we were going to fight World War I to save your cousins, Europeans and things like that. It's like, and then I was in Vietnam, right? It's like, so all these things that we are doing right? Like the brother that came back from World War II and then was blind, police officer put his billy club through both eyeballs and blinded him, because he had the nerve to be able to say, like, no, this is, I'm a man. I'm not going to prove my humanity, but I'm gonna defend it, right? And like that level of brutality, and we're gonna teach about it. We teach about this in our schools, and it is absolutely important that we teach about, not for them to cower, but no, but for them to be emboldened and say, like, if they can do that, if the shoulders that we leaned on and stand on did that, they did that for you, so that you can move this forward, right? Like, so that you can find your your path, and that you can exhibit the agency that we have always demonstrated. And again, folks who, if their only strategy to fight racism is telling us to fit into it better, they need to shut up, sit down, fall back, whatever. But no, like, just all you have to do is look at their audience, and who has appointed them and anointed them. And it ain't our community, right? So let's continue, like, the way that we and the people that we love have done it. Inspire, push, challenge, critique with love, and making sure that we don't let up 1 second in fighting against the white supremacist structures that have created and continue to sustain the problems in this country.
Young Ray.
Yeah, man. So thanks for the show, man. This was a dope show. And I appreciate the spirit that went behind it. I appreciate you sharing your scholarship with us. I know that your dissertation was kind of centered in this, so thanks for allowing us to learn from you today. Folks, if you're out there and you're trying to exhibit agency, allow our students, allow Black students, allow all students to learn at their own pace, right? Challenge them. Make sure that if you are teaching Black students, that you are teaching them on grade level, and that you are bringing in relevant text. If you are not prepared to teach them on day one, then don't take that job, right? Like, we got a lot of these teachers that are coming in that are prepared to teach, but not prepared to teach in the inner city, right? And so, like, you're taking 2 years in order to become accustomed in terms of, like, being in inner city schools with Black and brown kids, and that's 2 years of learning that's not happening for our kids, right? So, like, challenge yourselves to have enough agency to go and teach where you can teach, and not where you can get a job. And then also, man, we don't need no quiet quitters, right? We don't need no quiet quitters in K-12, and we damn sure don't need no quiet quitters teaching Black and brown kids, right? So if you out here quiet quitting because we know that these teacher unions have been doing this for ages, right? Like,
what's that, Ray?
Oh, I'm only so quiet quitting is basically a phenomenon that's going in right now, to where you teach basically what's in your contract, right? We don't need folks that are coming in and teaching basically what's in their contract. We need people that are going above and beyond for historically marginalized people. Because if everything was even, then hell yeah, you could teach from your contract, right? Hell yeah, if everything was even, but things are not even. We've named why they are not even. We've named why and how our historically marginalized folks show up, and we know that they need more. So if you're in these schools with kids that need more, do more. That's it.
Young Chris. Thank you, Ray.
So there was never a time in American history where we weren't blamed for our own oppression, where we weren't framed for our own victimization. From all the way into time, slavery, Reconstruction, Civil Rights era, segregation era, we were always, you can find it on the record, white people talking about us, especially conservatives, in ways where they were blaming us for our own lot in life. And that was during slavery, that was after slavery. Just whenever they were doing the worst to us, we were the reason for the blame. And that continues today. That is part of today. If you are listening to this and you're an educator and you are not teaching that to young people and how to investigate these things and how that still carries on today, I don't think that you are teaching. And I think that the goal of the fake agency people is to stop you from teaching the real to students and to place the blame on them if they are not succeeding, even though conditions and their surroundings have a big impact on them. So, you all have heard me say this on the show before. There was a study done on Long Island, hundreds of realtors involved. They sent a Black family and a white family in to buy a house with the exact same credit and the exact same background and resume, and they had very different outcomes. It wasn't because they had a problem with agency, right? And that is what you call systemic racism, what exists. And if you are not teaching young people the forensic tools to understand how this is an unequal society that will put them behind on purpose, then you are not teaching. You are not teaching. I don't know what you are doing, but I know the goal of the Agentic blackface folks is to stop you from arming young people with what they need to have a strong, truthful look at the system that they live in. The final thing that I would say is the reason I really want to do this show is because I know that Charles has been working on agency as a legitimate endeavor for study and scholarship for a long time. And I would hate to see that hijacked and used as a weapon against us by white people, near white people, and Black people that want to be white people. I would hate for that to be the thing that happens, because agency is such a useful concept for us. Self-determination has always been a useful concept for us, and we don't need anybody taking it and doing the wrong thing with it. So I would tell you to find Charles on Twitter, to follow him, and to know that over time that there will be more coming out around real agency for our young people in a hood agency, street agency, actual Black agency. Follow and wait for more and participate in that. But educators, please, for the love of God, do not teach young people this 1776, white lobotomy program for young people. Teach them how to.
Did you just say lobotomy?
Yes, that's exactly what this is. That's what 1776 agency is all about.
Chop it right off, huh?
It's a Black intellectual lobotomy, right? And what I need you to do is teach them to investigate the damn system that they live in. That's all I got to say.
Man, I appreciate all of you. I appreciate the just the patience around this. I think it's a good conversation. I think that you have to be able to spot charlatans that look like us, and they're good, because 90% of what they say is going to be rooted in some type of truth. It might get stretched out, but the charlatan can't leave a room without selling you some snake oil, baby. What are they selling you? What are they trying to get you to trade for that thing, for you to feel good in that moment? How are they pumping you up? And Paul Mooney has a much better term for it. And this is not my term, but I love it. He calls those people graham crackers. Graham crackers is what Paul Mooney will call them. Paul Mooney, look, Sharif El-Mekki will give you the scholars to read. I think you should read Paul Mooney's Black is the New White. I think it is so much wisdom in that joint. Combine the two. I think that they're great. I think that, but we are at a critical moment. We are at a critical moment where even this thing that this platform is built on, this wokeness, anti-woke, over-woke, or whatever the case is, that was stolen from Black people. It's all been stolen from Black people, but yet and still there's something wrong with you. Yet and still you can't produce. As you hearing from us on the platform, now guess what we did? Produced. Built from nothing. Built from phone calls and turned it into a whole thing. Wrote books off of it. You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't produce, we don't build. Everybody on this podcast, everybody that's tied to this podcast, all our friends, the people that listen, the people that, a group of fans that built their own book club and is doing their own knowledge and reading and stuff like that. Them people ain't resilient. Them people don't have that. Anything that's making you hate yourself and making you kill yourself and making you think less of your brother and your neighbor next door to you is poison. And you got to be aware when somebody is feeding you poison, because they sometimes give it to you for free, but the real shady ones charge you for it. That's Sharif, that's Ray, that's Chris, I'm Charles, and you will see us next week at the same time, and we can't wait to see y'all again. Y'all have a good night. Peace out.
Peace.